In this video, I'm going to share my top 100 tips to help you pass your driving test. But this is a video unlike any others I've done. There will be very few graphics on screen because this is designed for you to listen to and not watch. So it could be playing in the background as you go about your day, or maybe you could listen to it in the car, or perhaps at night before you fall asleep. Whatever way you consume this content, I hope you enjoy it and find it useful. And if you would like to support me on my mission to make as much quality content freely available to learner drivers, then you can do so by PayPal, Revolut, or even by bank transfer. Details will be in the description. Okay, let's start. Number 1. Don't listen to any rubbish about how only a certain amount of people pass the test in a given week, or quotas, or any other such conspiracy theories. This is utter nonsense, and the truth is that if you are good enough to pass your test, then you will. If not, then you're going to have another go at it. Number 2, if you make a mistake, such as hitting the curb, for example, it does not mean you automatically fail, as it will always depend on the situation. If you strike or graze the curb, do not panic or give up. Keep focused and keep trying your best, because in my experience, learner drivers will often overinflate the seriousness of their mistakes. Number 3. Similarly, if you stall or cut out, it doesn't mean that you fail, as it will depend on your reaction as well. So if you stall, just regain control of the car by using your handbrake and restarting the engine, and keep any rollback to an absolute minimum. More often than not, this kind of mistake is no more than a grade 2 mark, and you should be able to move on and recover. Number 4, you cannot fail on the theory and signs alone, even if you get them all wrong. Do your best with this aspect of the test, but the most you'll lose is a grade 2 mark, so it's important to keep it in perspective. Number 5, you need to have a good knowledge of where the engine parts are under the bonnet, and your driving instructor will cover this. So make sure you can point out the oil, dipstick, water, coolant, brake fluid and battery. This is just a small part of the test, but knowing these technical checks will show the tester that you have prepared, and it should give you a good confidence boost at the start of your driving test. Number 6. The tester will check that your indicators and brake lights are working correctly, so you must ensure that there are no issues here if you're using your own car. Number 7. You will be asked the hand signals, so make sure you know the hand signals that you would give to the Gardaí and to traffic behind. There's only 6 of them, and they're not that difficult, but they're important to know. Number 8. You really should get professional driving lessons from an approved driving instructor in the lead up to your driving test. This will help you become more familiar with the routes, and it'll help iron out any weaknesses. I think it is wise to get the lessons closer to the test date, so the information is more fresh in your head. A lesson the hour or so before your test can really help get you in the right frame of mind for the test. Number 9. Eat sensibly in the days and hours before your test. Fruits like blueberries, strawberries and raspberries can be good for concentration. Drink plenty of water as well. Number 10. Double check the time and date of your driving test and make sure you know which test centre you will be tested from. I have heard stories about learners turning up to the wrong test centre. It's good to be at least 15 minutes early for your test as well to avoid any last minute stress. Number 11. Practice driving in a quiet way without the radio on, so you can replicate the atmosphere the tester will create on your driving test. Number 12. Make sure your car is clean and tidy, both inside and out. You should not have any clutter in your car, and your windows and mirrors should be clean and clear. Number 13. Your car must be mechanically sound, and that means that no warning lights should be present on the dashboard. If you do notice any lights or you have concerns, then bring it to a qualified mechanic to get it checked over, or perhaps look into using a driving school car. Your tyres must be in good condition too and set to the correct pressure. Now bear in mind the tester is not going to check your tyres or your tyre pressure in depth, but it is important that they are in good shape and that they are not excessively worn. Number 14. Do not forget your L plates. They must be clearly displayed at the front and back of your car, and it might be no harm to have a spare set of L plates just in case. Number 15. If you are using your own car, then double check that the tax, NCT and insurance discs are legal, valid and in date, as the tester will examine them. And regarding the NCT, at the moment you are allowed to do a driving test with an expired NCT disc, but only if the NCT is less than 3 months out of date and as long as you can prove that you have an NCT appointment coming up. This is what the situation is at present in 2023, but that won't always be the case. In relation to the insurance, the green slip on the side of your insurance disc must be clearly showing. Whatever you do, do not cut this off. Number 16. Remember the 2-second rule when driving. In normal weather conditions, this means you must stay 2 seconds behind the vehicle in front. So when the car in front passes a stationary object, like a road sign for example, you need to pass that same stationary object at least 2 seconds or more later. Double it to 4 seconds in the wet. Number 17. Do not drive extra slow or pretend to be overly cautious on your test. Just drive normally and safely, but show confidence and decisiveness once it is safe to do so. Some drivers make a special effort to drive slow during the test, as they somehow think that putting on such an act will show the tester that you are a careful driver. The truth is, you need to drive in a practical and a realistic way that reflects the conditions. This shows confidence and knowledge. So, on a good, straight and open road, get up to the speed limit once it's safe to do so. But if you're driving on a narrow street with potholes, ramps and parked cars, then slow down accordingly. Judging each situation individually is far better than applying a one-size-fits-all approach. Number 18. As a learner driver, it can be difficult to judge when to go or when to wait at a junction or a roundabout. Try to bear in mind the 2 S's, that is speed and space. So if you are at a junction waiting to pull out, ask yourself, how fast is the other car going and how quickly is the space available reducing? Make a note of hills. So if the other car who has priority, if he's on a downhill or uphill, this can help with the decision-making process, because if they're travelling downhill, they will be picking up speed and it might be best for you to wait. But if they are going uphill, then this could present you with a potential opportunity to go, but only if it's safe to do so. Number 19. If changing lanes or overtaking, be extra aware of your mirrors. You must give extra mirror checks when changing position, and remember that the middle and the right side mirror is most important to check if you're moving to the right, just as the middle and left side mirror is more important if you're changing lanes to the left or moving left. If you are attempting to change lanes to the right, then it can be useful to visualize 2 halves in your right side mirror. If the car behind is in the right half of your side mirror, it should be safer to move across in comparison to the car being in the left half of the mirror, as it will be nearer to you. Number 20. Also on changing lanes, make sure to indicate in good time, even if you can't get across just yet. Having the signal on will let other drivers know your intentions. When it's safe, move across gradually once it is safe to do so, but do not change lanes on or near a pedestrian crossing. Number 21. I've come across a lot of learners who failed their test for progress at traffic lights because they were too hesitant. If you have a full circular shaped green light, then you can turn right if it's safe. You do not need to wait for a filter arrow light. So roll up into the middle of the junction if you are the first car and yield to oncoming vehicles once you have a full green light. Once it's safe, finish your turn, but do not get stuck in the middle of the junction after the light goes amber and red. You must clear the junction because if you don't, you will be causing an obstruction. It's so important that you fully understand this rule for turning right at traffic lights, because if you don't, it could cost you dearly. Number 22. As you approach a set of traffic lights, be careful of the stale green light. This is a light that has been green for a long time, and it could mean that the lights are about to change, especially if the junction has no cars waiting in front of you. Number 23. An amber light means you should stop if you can stop safely. But if the amber light comes on too late for you to react, then you have to keep going because you don't want to stop suddenly. 24. At traffic lights, watch out for the road markings such as cycle lanes and stop lines. Generally, you should stop before the first white line on a red light because anything beyond that could be reserved for cyclists or for the pedestrians to cross. Number 25. Watch out for the flashing amber arrow light. This means you can proceed, but only if there's no cars turning on the adjoining road or on the right. So treat the flashing amber arrow lights like a yield sign. Number 26. If you see a circular flashing amber light, then you may proceed if it's safe, but you must yield to any pedestrians crossing or about to cross. At a set of traffic lights, if you notice a flashing amber light, then you can go if there's no pedestrians around. You do not need to wait for the light to go green, because if you do when there's no pedestrians, you could lose marks on hesitancy. Number 27. Be aware of hills when moving off and parking, as this will affect your use of the pedals. So if stopping or parking on a downhill, it might be a good idea to brake early and gradually over a longer time frame than if you were parking on the flat. This should help you to stop smoothly because stopping late and suddenly is not going to reflect well on you as a driver. Similarly, when moving off on an uphill, a bit more juice might be needed, and if going up the gears on the uphill as well, you may require a bit more power before you actually change gears so the engine doesn't struggle after you complete the gear change. In general, try to keep your journey as smooth as possible, and that means no jumps or jerks with the clutch or gears. It also means gentle braking and gradual acceleration. Number 28. Avoid excessive coasting, as this can speed the car up, especially on the downhill. An example of coasting is flicking the gear stick into neutral when the car is moving, or holding the clutch in fully for too long after a gear change. Coasting is not necessarily a bad thing all the time, but it needs to be understood and controlled. For example, when dropping down the gears as you approach a junction, you must not stay on the clutch for a long time. Come off the clutch so you can properly engage the gear, but when doing so, release the clutch slowly for more smoothness. Some people release the clutch too early or too quickly, and this can lead to jumps or jerks after the gear change. Slowing down first is usually the best option before you actually gear down. So, slow down and then gear down. 29. A quick tip on the clutch. Don't rest your foot gently on the clutch when it's not in use. You might think this is harmless, but it is known as riding the clutch, and it is a bad habit that can cause wear on the pedal. If you are not using your clutch, then keep your left foot away from it, or put it on the ground, or maybe a footrest if one is available. The footrest could be right next to the clutch pedal. Number 30. It's important to brake softly and smoothly when slowing or stopping. Sometimes just pretending the brake pedal is a baby's head can help. It's also good to avoid constantly pressing the brake as you slow down or stop. A better option might be to release the brake a few times as you are coming to a stop, and this should help prevent a sudden or abrupt stop. The closer you get to actually stopping, the less you should need to brake. Number 31. When you want to slow down, try and bridge the gap between the accelerator and the brake. And this can be done by just easing off the acceleration pedal and driving with no acceleration for a few seconds before you press the brake. You can have your foot ready over the brake, but try not to go straight from the accelerator to the brake, just in case it feels like you are slowing down too quickly. No acceleration can be useful as you enter bends, or even sometimes as you are turning on a roundabout. Number 32. When pressing the accelerator, you should do so gently with the heel on the ground for more control. A bit of extra acceleration is usually required moving off or creeping forward on a hill. But don't press the accelerator too hard, as it might make a loud noise. Failure to use the acceleration on the hill could lead to the car struggling. The same applies if reversing back up a hill. A little extra juice should lead to a smoother reverse uphill, along with gentle clutch control. Number 33. There is no special rule regarding whether you should go down the gears one by one or whether you should skip a gear. Whatever way you decide to do it, just try and keep it as smooth as possible and avoid any jumps and jerks by braking before you drop gears and lifting the clutch slowly. Number 34. Normally you should stop in second gear and then go to first gear after you stop. For example, at a stop sign. But if it's a blind junction that requires you to creep forward, then it's good to go down to first gear just before the line. This will help you to edge out for a better view. A good example here would be when you're dealing with a blind yield junction that happens to be on an uphill. Number 35. At a T-junction, crossroads or any kind of junction, watch out for stop lines, which are a continuous white line. They may or may not be accompanied by the stop sign. Make sure you stop fully at a stop line and don't just roll through the junction slowly. Number 36. A four-way stop is a crossroads where all cars are required to stop due to all roads being of equal importance. Give way to traffic on the right and traffic already turning. At these types of junctions, you need to be concentrating and showing good observation. 37. Make sure you apply the handbrake first and then neutral or first gear, depending on what your next action is. For example, if you're parking or coming to a stop at a T-junction. Using the handbrake first is safer, as it secures the car quicker and will prevent rollback if your foot happens to come off the brake too soon. Number 38. Wait in first gear if you are at or near the top of the queue, as this will help you to move away quicker. It's fine to wait in neutral if you're further back in the queue. If you're first in the queue and you wait in neutral all the time, then this means you have a little bit more work to do before you move off, and you could potentially be at risk of losing a mark on progress if it takes you longer to move away. 39. Be aware of your back wipers and demisters. These are useful controls in order to enhance your observation. Knowing and understanding how these work will help you to keep your back windows clean and clear so you can have good observation out the back via the rearview mirror. This is particularly important during the winter months or in bad weather when your rear windscreen is more likely to fog up. On your driving test, you might be asked to demonstrate how the demisters work at the start of the test. And don't forget that having a clear view out the back is going to be useful during the reverse and your turnabout. 40. Don't fully trust the car not to roll back in an automatic vehicle. Some will roll back a little bit before the auto hold kicks in, and this is why using the handbrake is so important. Number 41. In relation to both a manual and an automatic car, you should use the handbrake if stopping on a hill, at traffic lights, or if stopped for longer than 5 seconds. If you are stopped in a queue and using the handbrake in both an automatic and a manual car, then have your foot ready over the accelerator to help you move away a little bit quicker. In an automatic car, you should be able to feel a little bite if you accelerate a small bit and then drop the handbrake to go. Number 42. An electric parking brake or automatic parking brake is absolutely fine to use in a driving test, and this should be used exactly the same as the regular handbrake. But remember, you don't have to physically let this down. Once you accelerate and raise the clutch, it will automatically release. If you find that it doesn't, just accelerate a bit more and that should do the trick. 43. When you are stopping on a hill, it is a good idea to put the clutch in a little bit sooner, as this will help you to stop more smoothly. When moving off on the hill, you need to give it some extra acceleration and get a stronger bite. Not only so the car doesn't roll back, but so that the car will move forward once the handbrake is released. A little extra juice as you move away can also help you to do a more efficient hill start. Number 44. When steering, don't cross the hands. Feed the wheel instead. So if you're turning left, your left hand should firstly move up to the top of the wheel, and then straight away afterwards your right hand should be at the bottom right, and then turn on this basis. On a straight road, holding the wheel at 2:45 is best, as you have easier access to the wipers and indicators. Don't let the wheel spin through your hands when straightening up, as this shows poor control. Number 45. Watch out for bends and adjust your position slightly, as long as it's safe and practical to do so. If the bend up ahead is disappearing to the right, then you should keep left for a better view. This will also help to ensure a safer gap between you and the oncoming traffic. If the bend disappears to the left, then try to be central in your lane for a better view of oncoming vehicles. When it comes to position on bends, this will always depend on the markings and how wide the lane is, so just try to judge each situation individually. Number 46. If the road opens up into 2 lanes up ahead, then you need to start off and remain in the left lane unless the tester says otherwise. There may be exceptions, for example, if there's a bus lane or if the tester wants you to take a right turn within a short distance. But generally speaking, if in doubt, just keep left. In multi-lane traffic that is a one-way street, you must be very conscious of signs and markings. Normally in this situation, you would aim to drive in the centre of your lane, as that's the most appropriate position. 47. If we are talking about position on the straight, then as a general rule, you need to keep left of centre. And on wider lanes, you should be more to the left. But on the more narrow roads and narrow lanes, then you will need to be a bit more central. At all times, watch out for markings that may require you to adjust your position, and you should avoid holes and drains if at all possible. If you have to drive into a hole, then at least do so slowly. 48. At roundabouts, you must have a clear understanding of the 12 o'clock rule. This means that if your exit is to the right of 12 o'clock, you should indicate right and use the right-hand lane if one is available. Indicate left to exit the roundabout, but please be aware of any signs and markings on the approach to the roundabouts. Number 49. If you are going straight on a single lane roundabout, then don't indicate on the approach, but signal left as you pass the exit before your one. Try to go around the roundabout in a kind of a C shape, and don't just cut through in a straight line, as that is poor positioning. As always, watch out for signs and markings. Number 50. At a blind junction or roundabout, it is absolutely crucial that you creep out for a better view. But do so slowly and gradually with clutch control. Or if you're creeping down the hill, then use brake control. This is coming on and off the brake to allow the car to edge out slowly. Lean your body forward for a better view and consider letting down the windows, because this can help you hear any approaching vehicles. Sometimes you might notice the shadows or reflections of cars against a wall or a window nearby, and this could alert you to other vehicles that have the right of way. 51. If you are at a busy T-junction or crossroads, don't stare the one way too long, because your observation will be imbalanced. Keep the head moving by looking both ways, and this way you'll be observing better and in a more efficient way. Staring the one way too long could mean that you miss something important, like a pedestrian or a cyclist. Number 52. When moving off from a parked position, you must check your blind spot over your right shoulder before you go. Make sure it is a proper check over the shoulder out the back passenger window, and double check it if it takes you a little bit longer to pull away. As you are moving away, check the right side mirror for confirmation that everything is okay. When moving off, think 1, 2, 3, 4 for convenience. Number 1, that means gear number 1, so first gear. Number 2 is in relation to your 2 indicators, so indicate to the right. Number 3 mirrors from left to right. And number 4 then is the blind spot, because it's in your 4 o'clock area. Say this in your head every time you move off, and it will help you to remember all the important steps. 53. You do not need to display any dramatic or excessive head movements in order to emphasize your observation. If you are showing good observation, then the tester will see you doing this because he's sitting right beside you. Observe in a way that is practical, realistic, and safe. This is a driving test, not an audition. Number 54. Check your mirrors before you indicate. If you are having trouble remembering to check the mirrors, then think MISS, M-I-S-S. M for mirrors, I for indicate, S for slow down, and the final S then is for second gear or maybe stop if you want. You do not need to be constantly checking the mirrors every 2 or 3 seconds because this is just unnecessary. It's more important to be reading the road ahead and planning ahead. If you are changing lanes or position, then yes, you will need to get lots of mirror checks in there. But if you're on a straight road, then the mirror checks every 8 or 10 seconds or so is absolutely fine. Remember, the priority is where you're going, not where you've come from. 55. The 4 S's can also remind you to do some mirror checks at important times. So the 4 S's are the following. Check your mirrors before slowing, stopping, going straight at a junction or roundabout, and when starting off in a queue. This will help keep you aware of any pedestrians, cyclists, or other hazards that might be nearby. 56. While waiting in a queue of traffic, maintain your focus and concentration by living in the moment and dealing with the present conditions, not what has happened in the past or what might happen in the future. Check what's happening further up in the queue, for example. Is the first car on a hill? And if so, this might remind you to use the handbrake so you don't roll back. Is there markings or ramps to be aware of? Is there pedestrians nearby that might use the pedestrian crossing further up in a few moments? Focusing on the present moment can help eliminate nerves and get you in a positive and practical frame of mind. Number 57. Normally you should do ramps and speed bumps in second gear and at around about 20 or 25 kilometers give or take, but it will always depend on the situation because the height and width of the ramps will vary. You will usually need to adjust your speed downwards to reflect the existence of the speed bump, but don't slow down to a crawling pace unless you really have to. Sometimes ramps will also be pedestrian crossings, so watch out for people nearby. 58. Watch out for bottlenecks. This is when the road narrows up ahead due to various reasons such as parked cars or a footpath that happens to widen. Slow down as you approach these pinch points to give you more time to think and react to any hazards or obstructions. Slowing down early and gradually will help to avoid late and sudden braking. Number 59. When dealing with parked cars, aim to move out early and gradually. Don't swerve or get too close to the stationary vehicles. If you are overtaking a long line of cars, aim to stay out as long as it's safe to do so, and don't weave in and out of the gaps between the cars. If an oncoming car appears, then you may need to pull back in to yield. But when doing so, don't indicate left in case people think you are parking. And try not to stop too close to the first parked car, as this might make it difficult to overtake. Leave enough room to comfortably move out, and once you're beside the parked cars, try and leave at least a door length of clearance if possible. If you cannot leave a door length, then slow down to make up for the lack of clearance. Number 60. It's a good idea to indicate if you're moving out significantly to overtake something or if you're crossing the centre of the road. However, do not leave the indicator on too long in case people think you're turning right further up on the road. If there is a line of parked cars, then indicate if needed, but switch it off once you get level with the first parked car, because at this stage you are already out in the position you intended to be. Number 61. Watch out for stop lines and stop signs. You must stop completely at these junctions. Don't fall into the trap of slowly rolling through the stop lines or the junctions, because it could cost you dearly. A solid white line means stop and a broken one means yield. But regardless of what line is there, you should stop and creep out carefully if the junction is dangerous, unfamiliar or blind. Number 62. As you are driving in your test, just take it one road at a time and deal with one task at a time. Don't waste your time and energy worrying about things that happened in the past or things that haven't happened yet. Deal with what you can see and control in the present moment. Number 63. If you're worried about certain parts of your driving, then visualize yourself doing these aspects of driving in a confident and flawless way. Visualization techniques like this can have a positive impact on your overall performance. It can also help to remind yourself of a certain part of driving that you recently did well on. So for example, if you performed a good reverse around the corner in your lesson recently, then try to relive this in your mind and give yourself credit for a job well done. As a driver, you might be guilty of being too hard on yourself sometimes. Number 64. If you are in a slow-moving queue, don't block junctions that other cars might want to turn into. This shows courtesy and consideration, but if there's a lot of housing driveways there, then it's not going to be practical to keep every one of these free, as you have to make your own progress as well. As always, it will depend on the road. Watch out for yellow boxes and don't stop or wait on the yellow box. The only time you can stop on a yellow box is when you want to turn right, like at traffic lights, for example. Number 65. Do not beckon other vehicles or people out onto the road in case they rush it without taking the proper care and consideration. Let them make their own decision, and that way they're likely to pay more attention. At pedestrian crossings, you need to yield to people crossing or about to cross, but a driver is not required to let a pedestrian cross at an unmarked crossing. However, if the pedestrian has already stepped out onto the road, then they have the right of way. Number 66. Watch out for the body language of people on the road. For example, if a pedestrian or a cyclist is looking over their shoulder, then they might be thinking about crossing the road or taking a turn, respectively. If they are walking towards pedestrian crossing but not paying attention because they are lost in their phone, then prepare to react just in case they cross the road carelessly. This is why it's important to read the road ahead and not focus too much on the one thing. Number 67. If you meet a funeral on your driving test, slow down and prepare to stop until it is passed. Watch out for and obey the funeral director, who might ask you to pull in or change position. Also, listen to and obey your driving tester as well, because it is a bit of a grey area and there are no specific rules or guidelines in relation to meeting a funeral on your driving test. 68. Make a note of the car in front and what they're doing. For example, if their brake lights or indicators come on, they will be slowing down, so you'll probably need to do the same. If the car in front is queuing up with his brake lights on, then he is probably not using the handbrake, so prepare for the possibility of them rolling back if it's a hill. It might be a good idea in this case to give them a bit of extra clearance. This is why a good driver must not get overly obsessed with excessive and unnecessary mirror checks, because this doesn't help you to plan ahead and react to hazards up ahead. 69. If you notice a car in front driving very slowly, don't automatically rush to overtake. They might be lost or inexperienced, and they could turn very suddenly. It's usually best to take a few seconds, hold back, and try and judge the situation in a calm and reasonable way. Number 70. If you notice a car or a bus parked awkwardly on the road that's causing a bit of an obstruction, then again, don't rush to overtake. They might just be stopped temporarily in order to let a passenger out or to drop something off. Slow down gradually while moving gently over to a right of centre position within your lane. Don't stop too close, and if you get the feeling that they are about to move off, then let them do so. Watching their indicators will help, and this approach could save you the need to perform a risky overtaking manoeuvre. 71. Generally speaking, do not cross the solid white line in the middle of the road, but there are certain exceptions when you are allowed to do so, such as overtaking a slow-moving vehicle. If you are dealing with a slow vehicle like a tractor, for example, then you may well need to cross the solid line to overtake once it is safe to do so. As a driver, you cannot apply a strict and rigid interpretation of the rules of the road. You have to be practical and flexible in certain situations. 72. When driving, be aware of your indicators because they can switch off early due to your steering wheel straightening, even slightly. And if you're concentrating hard, you may not notice this and it could lead to a fault on the signals. For example, if you are taking a left approaching a T-junction that curves off to the left on the approach, then your signal may be neutralised if you inadvertently straighten the wheel as you're creeping out. And if your focus is on the main road, you might not notice that your indicator has turned off. You need to associate left and right turns with the tick-tock sound of your signals. 73. You must signal left to exit a roundabout, but practice the timing and don't indicate left until you have passed the exit before the one you wish to take. If it's a really small mini roundabout, then a signal left to exit may not be required because it could interfere with your steering. 74. Always indicate to park and leave the left indicator on if you're sticking out and taking up lane space. This lets people know that you're staying stopped and you don't wish to move off just yet. A lot of people accidentally let the indicator switch off when parking, and this leads to faults adding up. As you pull into park, the wheel may automatically switch off the signal as you straighten up to the right. So be aware of this and make sure you indicate properly when parking. Number 75. Watch out for misleading signals, which could be from indicating too early or from leaving it on too long after you have completed a junction. If you are taking a left turn, scan the road ahead and signal when there's no other left turns before the one you intend on taking. As you indicate left to exit a roundabout, don't let the indicator stay on after your wheel has straightened. This could happen if you exit a roundabout straight onto a right bend, and it could potentially lead to a misleading signal. 76. In the summer or whenever the weather is good, be alert for cyclists and joggers on the road. And this is why it's a good idea to check your mirrors before moving off in a queue, so you can be aware of cyclists or people nearby. Number 77. A cycle lane with a continuous white line must be used by cyclists, and cars cannot enter unless it's an emergency or for taking a turn. In relation to a cycle track with a broken white line, a driver can make temporary use of this to overtake on the left, for example, but only if it's safe to do so and only when there's no cyclists using it. Number 78. When you are about to reverse around the corner, you should have an opportunity to look at the corner as you pass it by to park on the left. This will give you the opportunity to see what type of corner it is. For example, what kind of hill is there and how sharp the corner is. Indicate to park on the left, but there's no need to indicate when you are reversing around the corner because your reversing light is enough of an indicator. Number 79. On the reverse, you need to keep it slow because this will give you a chance to judge things better and it'll create the time and space to get the proper looks in. Gentle clutch control is crucial here, but if it's on a downhill, then use brake control. This is just coming on and off the brake to allow the car to reverse slowly. Doing it slowly will make the steering easier as well. Number 80. On the reverse around the corner, look around fully before starting. And when you are reversing, do not look in your mirrors too much. Yes, you can check them for guidance, but it is crucial that you look behind over both shoulders more. It's especially important to check the right shoulder a few times on the bend as well, especially just before your initial left turn. If your car has a reversing camera, then it is fine to look in this as long as you don't look in it too much. The reason you look back over both shoulders is to watch out for other vehicles and people coming from behind. Yield to other road users near you by stopping and letting them pass. If they can't or won't go around you, then do your observation checks and return to the start. 81. When you're reversing around the corner, it is usually best to wait until the curb disappears before you turn. If it's a gradual corner, then steer gradually and slowly. But if it's a sharper corner, you may need to steer a little bit quicker. As the curb reappears, you will need to straighten up so you don't hit the curb. And after you have successfully straightened up the car, just steer very gently to make any further adjustments towards the end. Some learners are guilty of oversteering here towards the end of the reverse, and it can lead to confusion as the car weaves in and out. So just doing gentle steers and giving the car time to react to your instruction is usually the best way to maintain control. Number 82. On the turnabout, you need to steer fast but drive slow. Aim to do it in 3 turns if you can, but on the more narrow roads, or if you're driving a longer car, it is absolutely fine to take extra turns to complete it. Clutch control is very important here, as well as gentle braking. You only need to indicate right at the beginning of your manoeuvre and avoid dry steering. Dry steering is when you steer without the car moving, and it can cause uneven wear to the tyres. Number 83. Be aware of any hills on the turnabout and use your handbrake if required. If you are using your handbrake, you will need to find a bite that is very, very gentle so the car doesn't move forward or back too abruptly. Number 84. Observation is absolutely vital on the turnabout, so make sure you look all around at the start and when stopped. Look back over both shoulders reversing and try not to look down at the gear stick. At the start of your turnabout, yield to other road users nearby. But once you have started, you are not really in the best position to yield to anyone apart from pedestrians or cyclists on the footpath maybe. So usually you have to finish your manoeuvre and avoid freezing. Normally other cars will understand what's going on and they will hold back and give you the time and space to complete your turnabout. 85. Hitting the curb on either the turnabout or the reverse is not the end of the world, so don't be too worried if you do clip a curb. As long as you don't mount the footpath at speed on either manoeuvre, then the fault is very unlikely to be serious. This is why a slow speed on both the turnabout and the reverse is so important, because if you do make a mistake, it is easier to manage it and move on from it. 86. Once you are finished your reverse or turnabout, it will soon be time to move off. So please don't forget your routine for moving off safely, which includes indicating and checking your mirrors and blind spot. Some learners forget this after the manoeuvres because their mind may still be on the turnabout or the reverse that you've just completed. Don't lose marks on signals or observation as you are about to pull away after your reverse or turnabout. 87. After your driving lessons or practice sessions, you should take down some notes on your mistakes. This can help you to reflect on your driving and it should make you more aware of your mistakes. As a result of this, you will be in a better position to make improvements. 88. If you have questions for your driving instructor, then write them down and ask them at the start of your next driving lesson, so you don't forget. Once your lesson starts, you are probably going to be too focused on the lesson to remember the questions you intended on asking. Getting your questions clarified at the start of your lesson can help set you up for a good, positive drive. 89. Sometimes getting a lesson or two from a different driving school can be helpful, as another driving instructor might have a different style of teaching that could suit you, and perhaps they may explain things in a different way that might appeal more to you. They could notice things that weren't picked up before, and sometimes it's just nice to hear another voice. So this might be worth considering as a potential option if it suits you. Number 90. I read in my emails a lot about people passing or doing mock tests or pre-tests, etc. I can safely say I can count on one hand the number of times I've done a mock test with any of my learners anyway. I think they can be a bit of a waste of time and a handy excuse for the instructor to sit in the passenger seat and take it handy. Passing one of these things will probably make you feel good, but I don't see the point because it's not realistic. The pressure and atmosphere are not the same as the real thing. The instructor in my book is an instructor, so he or she should focus on teaching, which is what I do in my lessons. I never do any of these mock tests. I just teach and educate and communicate with the learner whenever I can. A mock test can be a good way of finding out mistakes, and if they are done with a stranger, they may be more beneficial to the learner. But as a learner preparing for your driving test, you have to ask yourself, is the instructor actually explaining and educating you on anything in relation to these mock tests? It's easy to point out a mistake and to tick a box, but it's a little bit more difficult to actually educate and articulate to a learner driver how to fix these mistakes. So for example, if I'm doing a lesson and we do a reverse around a corner and I see that the learner is having a little bit of trouble with it, then I will ask the learner to tell me what's going wrong. I'll ask them what the problem is. Then I'll offer some tips and advice. I might take them away then to work on some basics like steering technique and clutch control and things like that, because that'll help build knowledge and confidence. And then we may come back to the curb then, back to the corner, and do it again until we get it right or until we see some improvements. Now, in a mock test, you're probably not going to be able to do this as there isn't any time to. The mistakes or weaknesses happen and they build up, and they're not really being dealt with and tackled in the moment because the driving instructor is too busy pretending to be a driving tester. Now, I'm not saying that a mock test is completely useless, and they do have the potential to be part of your driving journey. However, doing too many of them, I'm not sure is going to be helpful. I don't think it helps learners achieve their true potential if you do too many of them, in my opinion anyway. So we're up to tip number 91 now, and these last 10 tips are going to be really quick tips, okay? So here we go. 91. Practice makes perfect, but try to practice on different roads and at different times to broaden your knowledge and experience. 92. Don't tell too many people about your test because you could be putting pressure on yourself. Not everyone needs to know about your driving test. 93. Drive with your dipped headlights on. It'll make you more visible to others on the road. 94. If it rains, use the appropriate wiper setting or speed. You could also use the intermittent setting here. Remember to switch them off though when the rain stops. 95. Wear comfortable shoes. Flip-flops are not allowed. 96. Don't forget, you're probably never as good a driver as you are on the day of your driving test. 97. If someone flashes you to go, then go, but don't rush it and make sure you take the proper observations. Only go when safe. 98. If another driver is rude or aggressive, remember, that's a reflection on their state of mind and not yours. 99. When parking at the end of the test, leave the car in gear after you switch off the engine, as it's more secure. And number 100, at the end of your test, just check your mirror and right shoulder before opening your door for extra safety, just in case any people or cyclists are around. So if you liked this video, then why not give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might benefit from it? Let me know your thoughts on this style of video in the comments section, because if learners find this podcast useful and beneficial, then maybe I'll do more. Good luck with your driving, and I'll see you soon. Slán go fóill.